Hey, welcome back. We're going to play a little with charts in a spreadsheet here. So earlier, I took some responses from a survey and shared them out with a partner, and I made a chart. And the partner can see the same kind of stuff. So here I'm math coach, and math coach is looking at this graph and thinks, well, I'm not sure about that graph. So you can help edit each other's graphs. It's not a good idea. It's not a bad idea to check with the other person first. But let's suppose there was some discussion that the donut chart's not really the best way to display this, although it looks, although it looks cute, it might be better, wrong way, to display this as a table instead. And so you can always edit a chart, get back the editor here, and under the data tab is where you can select the kind of chart that you want to do. And so we could decide on whether it should be a column chart or a bar chart, and there's pros and cons to each one. Either way, having a legend for a single color isn't really necessary. And so let's suppose math coach here decides, okay, this is a better display of the data, and I am going to take that legend and turn it to none. It gives the graph more room to expand, and so he's going to use that one. To use a chart like this, you can do a couple of things. You can go to the menu here and you can just choose copy it. And then you can bring it into your sheet and add it in by just pasting it. And it wants to know whether it's linked or not. The cool thing about linking it is then when you update the chart or the data gets updated, then it can be updated in the Word doc too. So I kind of recommend doing that. But there are times when you don't want it linked, when you just want a static snapshot of that point in time. So I think in this case, linking it's a good idea, but sometimes it's not a good idea. So it pops it in there as an image, and you can resize it, and you can have the text wrap around it, just like with the images you played with before. And don't put a graph in unless you have some commentary to go with it. So if this is going to be here, I'm going to have to comment on it, or someone else in the group is going to have to write something about it. So let's take a look at some other things. So right now I can see there's two different people in here. There's Coach Parker editing it, and then there's me, Gary Parker, editing this. And I mentioned earlier that you should always have a copy of the form responses that you do your work in. Now, this particular spreadsheet's got a lot of columns in it, and it's got a fair amount of rows. And if everybody starts making tables in it, it could get a little bit messy. And so for two reasons, at least, I like to sometimes bring myself into other tabs to do the work. Sometimes it's just to clean things up where there's not so many distractions around me. And sometimes it's because somebody else is working on it and I don't want to interfere with what they're doing. So let's suppose that I'm going to take one of the questions that only some people answered because of the branching in my survey. There's a lot of white space in here. And sometimes I like to clean out that white space. So maybe I don't care about their other answers. I only care about that answer for the moment. And so I can copy that whole column, and I can add a new sheet to play with it. Often when you put a new sheet, just don't leave it called sheet 5. This one I'm going to call how often. So just a short name for something for me to understand, and then I'll paste in whatever data I copied. Once it's pasted in there, I can do something like sort it to condense it. So then I could go to data, and we played around with sorting in the tutorials a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to say this does have a header row. I'm going to sort by how often do you play. And again, I could have done all of this in the other spreadsheet and reshuffled all of the rows. But again, there could be more than one people working in there at the same time, and that people can get in each other's way. So making a new tab is not a bad idea. So then I sort it, and now it's just I have everything nice and tidy. So one person said daily, one person said monthly, one person said weekly. Most people said not in years or not in months. For how often do you play? I think that was Minecraft. And then I can make a chart out of that by highlighting the data and using my chart button. And it throws it in right away. And that's a pretty good display of this. So often the chart Google picks is the right one, but not always. So you may decide that you want to do a pie chart or you want to do a bar chart instead. Let's suppose I like this. The title seems reasonable, although it says count of how often do you play. So I might want to clarify that. So I can just edit that. I don't think I need the phrase count of. I think that's pretty obvious, and it says it on the side. And maybe I want to clarify how often do you play Minecraft, because that was the question I was on. Other things, I don't need a legend because there's only one color. So instead of titles, I can click on legend. Instead of position right, I can choose no position. So that gives more room for the chart to expand. You can also play around by changing the color. You can edit things individually. If I want to go to series, I can mess with the color. Maybe I want it to be, I don't know, what's a good Minecraft color? Green? Maybe. So everything is editable on here. And if more data comes in, I won't see that here. That's only going to show up in the form responses. So we might have to do snapshots if this is something we're doing over in time. If there's more people taking the survey next month, I would have to reanalyze the data. But you typically don't want to edit the original response data. And then I can take this and add it to my sheet and then make some comments about whether this information was surprising, useful, not useful, whatever. And that's up to you to figure out how to comment on it. Now, not all data is easy to come up with graphs for. Now, you already saw that when you look at the responses tab here, Google makes some charts for you. So if you see a chart here you think is good, like what is your gender, then you try to make that chart by highlighting the data in your sheet and get that chart in your sheet. So any chart that's on your write-up, I expect to see somewhere in one of the tabs or sheets in your Learn to Code responses sheet. Okay, tricky data. Sometimes we ask questions for which there were multiple selections people could make. So here they had to select male or female or none of your business. However, if I come down, in which games or content areas would you be interested in coding? Here they could have selected any, all, or none of the options that I gave them. And they also had a place they could type their own thing, like somebody typed Blizzard games. I'm not sure what that is, but hey, somebody's interested in it. How do you sort out data like this to get a count like that? That's a little trickier, so I'm going to go through how to do that, how to make a chart like this one here. First thing I want to do is find the column of interest that has multiple options for each user, and I want to copy it and bring it to a new sheet. New sheet again, and I'm going to paste it in, and I'm going to call it, say, coding interest, plural maybe. And I already have something called coding interest. So I'll call it coding interest. And I'll put today's date to be clear. Maybe somebody else is working on the same thing, and me and my group need to communicate better. So what is today anyway? I think it's the 5th. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to separate, because right now this is just one big cell with a whole bunch of stuff in it. I need to separate that out. So to do that, I'm just going to highlight my whole column of stuff. And I'm going to tell the spreadsheet to split it. So under data, you're going to split text to columns. And this is a relatively new feature in Sheets. I think it just came about last year. So what Google will do is it'll look for something that's obvious to separate. So here it saw commas. And so anytime it had a comma, it threw the next thing into a new column, comma, new column, comma, new column, only if necessary. If it doesn't automatically detect the separator, you can choose the separator or pick a custom separator. Like maybe your data was separated by semicolons or colons. Colon isn't listed here as an obvious one. But here it automatically noticed the commas. Sometimes the data is separated by spaces. But in this case, Candy Crush and Angry Birds, they're definitely the name, Disney Infinity. Okay, so it separated it. All right, let's narrow this down. I don't need that to be so wide. So next thing I want to do is figure out how to count all of this stuff here. Now, there's not too many that I couldn't do it by hand, but you want to learn how to do it on a spreadsheet. So down below somewhere, I'm going to put a title called option, something somebody chose, and I want to count each of those options. So these are my headings for a new table I'm going to make based on this data. So let's make that a little more colorful and bold. Now I have to list all of my options. So I'm basically going to look for the longest set of stuff and copy this, so I don't have to retype it. Cool thing on a spreadsheet when you paste, There's a special paste called transpose, which changes a row into a column or a column into a row. So I copied a row. When I hit paste transpose, it copies into a column. Okay, so what did I miss? Somebody had a none. There's a Twitter that's missing. So I just want to search through here to see anything I missed. All right, so I did that earlier in this page called, I think, how often? No, code what? There it is. So I sorted it. And then I came up with a list of everything that appears above. All right, so now to count it. So there is a formula called, or a function called count. Now I want count if. And what count if is going to do is it's going to look for certain kinds of things. So I want it to look in my whole range of stuff up here. So I need to get all of the rows and columns that have stuff in it. So you want to make sure you go over to the right enough and get everything. And then I want to tell it what to look for. So I'm going to say, comma, look for the thing that I mentioned right here. And then close parentheses. So if I hit enter, it's going to count how many times it saw Star Wars. So it says it saw Star Wars 5 times up above right here. And so we can kind of scan it and double check. So there's 1 Star Wars. Check this out. Control F on the keyboard gives you a search. And you can type Star Wars. And it says it found it 6 times. 6 times people picked it. And then the 1 time I put it in my countable things. So yeah, that 5 is correct. Cool. All right, now the cool thing is I have cell references above. Now when I fill this formula down, 2 things are going to happen. The A2 through G46, that's going to shift down, and the A50 is going to shift down. So instead of saying A50, when I copy it down, it's going to say A51 and look for Candy Crush. That's cool. Unfortunately, up above, it's going to shift that 2 to a 3 and the 46 to a 47, and it's going to start losing track of my data. So I need to say, put $signs in front of the row numbers, meaning as I copy it down, fix the row numbers. Why row numbers? Well, I'm copying it down, and the row numbers change when you go up and down. All right, so now that I've made the row numbers absolute references for the range of stuff I'm looking at, but relative, no $signs for the thing I'm counting, I'm ready to fill this down. So filling that down, I get a count of things. So now I can say, all right, take all this stuff here and make me a chart out of that. And so here it's got a bar chart. I could change it to more like the column chart that was displayed before. And you can play around with the customize section and make it more look like the Google version right here. Okay, but it's important that you learn how to build the charts that are here. So Google offers suggestions for this class. You need to go to your spreadsheet and actually build them. So I could have it display counts on here. I could have it get rid of the legend. I can change the color of things. Now, right now it's called count versus thing. That's not a very good title. So I'm going to have to edit that title to say something better based on the question, so that when somebody looks at it in my report, they understand what my graph means. So you're going to have to play around with editing titles for the whole chart and for each axis. And that's all in Customize. So that's about the most complicated kind of chart. This is called a histogram sometimes, and it's a good chart to know how to make. For some kinds of data, Google can automatically make the histogram. But when we have data within data cells, then Google has a harder time doing it with the regular chart tool. But the analyzer that comes with forms does it automatically, which is nice. All right, I wanted to keep this short. That's it for now. Get in touch if you have any questions. Take care. Goodbye.